I'm just going to come out and say it. This December was boring. It was like there's Avatar, and then nothing. No massive box office disasters to talk about, just a handful of mid-budget flops nobody wanted, and of course Marty Supreme, which I'm still on the fence about. Let's take a look. A24 spent $90 million on a Timothée Chalamet ping-pong movie. That's more than double what they spent on Civil War, which was their previous record. Normally, they don't do this. They're the low-budget, high-impact studio. But they went all in on Marty Supreme with this massive, aggressive, weird marketing campaign where Chalamet was everywhere. And with all the Oscar buzz around his performance, you'd think this thing was printing money. I actually assumed it was already a hit before I looked up the numbers. But 2 weeks into its theatrical run, it's made $58 million. The break-even point for a $90 million movie is at least $250 million. It's not even close. Here's where it gets interesting, though. Kevin O'Leary has a role in the movie as Gwyneth Paltrow's husband, and he went on the record saying the production wasted millions by hiring human extras when they could have just used AI. He said almost every scene had 150 extras who had to stay awake for 18 hours, fully dressed, moving around in the background, sometimes not even visible on camera. He argued they could have spent $35 million instead of $90 and made 2 movies, which is a wild thing to say about the movie you're in, but okay, Kevin. Marty Supreme did get 3 Golden Globe nominations and there's serious Oscar buzz, so it'll probably get some traction during awards season. That usually translates to box office, and it hasn't had a wide international release yet, so there's still money to be made. But even with all that, I don't see it getting anywhere near $250. The problem is, nobody knew this movie existed. Hugh Jackman and Kate Hudson made a musical drama about a real-life Neil Diamond tribute act from Milwaukee. It opened on Christmas Day and has made exactly $30 million worldwide, which happens to be exactly what it cost to make. So technically it broke even, but that's not how this works. Marketing costs money, theaters take their cut. This thing needs to make significantly more than its budget just to not be a loss. And it's already heading to premium video on demand on January 13th, just 3 weeks after theatrical release. That's not the move you make when a movie's doing well. Musical biopics are a gamble. You get Bohemian Rhapsody, which was huge, or you get I Want to Dance with Somebody, which wasn't. This one leans toward the latter. Kate Hudson got a Golden Globe nomination for it, and she's genuinely incredible in the movie, even though the movie itself didn't work. And Hugh Jackman got a guitar signed by Neil Diamond out of the deal, so at least someone's happy. Focus Features will probably make their money back eventually on streaming. It's relatively low budget and has that sentimental rewatch value. But in theaters, it was dead on arrival. Bradley Cooper's 3rd movie as a director. His first one, A Star is Born, made over $400 million worldwide and got 8 Oscar nominations. His second, Maestro, was another Oscar bait drama that did okay. And then there's this one, which nobody even knew was released. Cooper went smaller this time. It's a conventional dramedy about a recently separated finance guy who stumbles into stand-up comedy. Will Arnett plays the lead, Laura Dern plays his estranged wife, who sees his act by chance, and they end up reconnecting. It's loosely based on the life of English comedian John Bishop. The movie made $1 million at the box office so far. Searchlight Pictures released it in just a handful of theaters, and that was basically it. It played as the closing night film at the New York Film Festival, got decent reviews, and then vanished. No Oscar buzz, no audience awareness, basically nothing. There's no word on the budget, but with this cast and shooting in New York, it can't be cheap. Even small-looking movies can cost a fortune. Like Begonia takes place mostly in a basement and had a $50 million budget. So this is probably somewhere in the 10 to 15 million range. Searchlight might give it a wider release in January, but right now it just looks sad. James L. Brooks hasn't directed a movie in 15 years. His last critical and commercial hit was As Good as It Gets back in 1997, 28 years ago. Since then, he's made Spanglish, which lost money, and How Do You Know, which absolutely bombed. So naturally, Disney greenlit his new movie. Ella McCay is about a young politician who becomes her state's governor and tries to balance career with family. The cast is solid here with Emma Mackey, Rebecca Hall, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Woody Harrelson. Disney gave it a wide release on over 2,500 screens. It opened with $1.8 million. That's one of the worst wide release openings in U.S. history. The second weekend it dropped 84% from the previous Friday. Critics gave it a 21% on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences gave it a B- on CinemaScore, which is basically a failing grade. It ended its run with $4.3 million against a $35 million budget. 2 weeks before it was supposed to open in France, they just canceled the release entirely. So why did Disney make this? They had to know the script wasn't good. Brooks hasn't been reliable in decades. Emma Mackey isn't exactly a household name. Industry talk says it was a trade. Disney wanted Brooks to develop a sequel to The Simpsons movie, which they just announced for 2027. So basically, Disney took a $30 million loss on a movie they probably knew would fail, just to get a Simpsons sequel. And you just know that one's going to make them hundreds of millions. Back in 2024 at CinemaCon, Angel Studios told theater owners that their upcoming movie David would be the highest-grossing animated film of all time. They announced it as this huge Thanksgiving 2025 release. That didn't happen. Angel Studios had figured out their business model: low to mid-budget faith-based and family movies that turned small profits. 10 million in, 15 million out, everyone's happy. Then they decided to get ambitious. David is an animated movie about the biblical figure who killed Goliath. They spent over $60 million on it. They gave it a massive wide release, over 3,000 screens, tons of marketing. It made $70 million, which sounds fine until you realize they spent $60 on production and probably another $30 or $40 on marketing. And almost all of that $70 million is domestic. International markets brought in less than $500,000. That's because of a lawsuit that blew up in spring 2025. The film's producer, Slingshot, sued Angel Studios, claiming they'd completely overstepped their authority. Apparently, Angel excluded Slingshot from decisions about international distribution, merchandising, and marketing. Basically treated David like it was their own in-house production when it wasn't. Because of that mess, Angel only secured domestic distribution rights, and that didn't happen until fall 2025, which is why it got pushed off Thanksgiving. The international release got shifted to Easter and Palm Sunday in most of the world. So Angel tried to go big, spent 6 times their usual budget, got into a legal fight with their producer, lost international markets, and ended up with a movie that maybe broke even, if you're being generous. They'd have been better off making 6 $10 million movies instead. This one's almost sad because the movie's actually good. Mike P. Nelson directed a remake of the 80s cult horror classic Silent Night, Deadly Night. It's about a guy who watched his parents get murdered on Christmas Eve by someone dressed as Santa. And now every Christmas he dresses up as Santa and kills people himself. The movie got an 81% on Rotten Tomatoes, 75% audience score. For a slasher movie, those are legitimately strong numbers. Critics liked it. Audiences who saw it liked it. It opened on over 1,600 screens and made $1.1 million. That's a $682 per screen average, which is terrible. It actually did worse than Ella McCay, which itself was one of the worst debuts in Disney's history. For context, the IMAX re-release of The Shining made $1.5 million that same weekend on just 400 screens. A 46-year-old movie in limited release outgrossed a brand new wide-release slasher. The movie ended with $2.3 million total, but Mike Nelson's already thinking about a sequel. He said he's been playing around with ideas and even pitched the producers the other day. Apparently, there are some really fun and crazy ideas they're tossing around, and he's putting it out in the universe. $558 per theater opening weekend. That's what Fackham Hall made per screen. To put that in perspective, that Sydney Sweeney movie Christie that everyone hated did better than that. I didn't know this movie existed until I looked at December's box office numbers, and I'm betting you didn't either. Which is bizarre because they got Damian Lewis in it. They got Tom Felton, Draco from Harry Potter. That should count for something. Bleecker Street distributed it. And if you follow box office stuff, you know Bleecker Street is where movies go to die. They're the last resort distributor. They pick up films nobody else wants and throw them into theaters for a week, which is almost admirable in a way. At least somebody's trying to get these things on a big screen, but they don't have money for real marketing. Fackham Hall played on over 1,000 screens. Most showtimes were weekday afternoons when theaters are empty. No advertising, terrible scheduling. The movie made $2.6 million total so far. Bleecker Street keeps doing this somehow. They make their money on streaming deals, not theatrical runs. So the theater thing is basically just going through the motions. Put it out for a week, let it die, then sell it to streaming. Amanda Seyfried's having an interesting year. The Housemaid surprised everyone and made money. Good for her. Then this one came out and made $265,000. It's about the woman who founded the Shakers back in the 1700s, Ann Lee. And it's a musical, R-rated. So you've got this period piece about an 18th century religious leader and they're singing throughout the whole thing. Seyfried apparently gives her career best performance in it. She even got a Golden Globe nomination. Searchlight Pictures gave it a limited release in December with plans to expand it in January, but we'll see how that goes. Word is the budget was around $10 million, which means it's nowhere close to breaking even. Brady Corbet co-wrote the script after The Brutalist had that successful Oscar run last year. But this is a much tougher sell. Critics keep comparing it to obscure 70s art house films, which should tell you everything about its commercial prospects. There's just no real audience for this. And honestly, that's been the pattern with indie movies the last couple years. They make these critically acclaimed films with great performances, and nobody shows up to see them. Seyfried absolutely deserves an Oscar nomination for this. But the movie cost $10 million and made less than $300,000 so far. It's just going to disappear.